Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Baba Girivardhari Gopi Jana Baba Girivardhari Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Shira Vanachari Jamuna Shira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Shira Vanachari Jamuna Shira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Kunja Vihari. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramhansa Parivrajagacharya Stotara Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramhansa Parivrajagacharya Stotara Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinatha Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Shamaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Narayanam Naraskritam Naram Chaivam Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Dhyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloker Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Third canto, 26th chapter, 7th verse. Is that right? Tad Asya Samsritir Bandha Para Tantriam Cha Tatkritam Bhagavati Akartur Ishasya Sakshino Nivritatmanaha Tarasya Samrisitir Bandha Paratantriyam Tatatkritam Bhagavatyat Karturdishyasa Sakshina Niritatmanaha Tarasya Samsritir Bandha Paratantriyam Chatatkritam Bhagavatya Karturishvam Sakshina Nivritatmanaha Tarasya Samritir Bandha Tam Triyam Tatkritam Bhagavati Akartur Ishyasya Sakshino Nivritatmanaha Tat from the misconception, Asya of the conditioned soul, Samshritihi conditioned life, Bandha bondage, Paratatriam dependence, Cha and Tatkirtam Tatkritam made by that, Bhagavati is Arkutu of the non-devotees, Ishasya, independent, Shakinaha, the witness, Nivrita, Nivrita Atmanaha, joyful by nature. Material consciousness is the cause of one's conditional life, in which conditions are enforced upon the living entity by the material energy. Although the spirit soul does not do anything and is transcendental to such activities, he is thus affected by conditional life. Responsibly, material consciousness is the cause of one's conditional life, in which conditions are enforced upon the living entity by the material energy. Although the spirit soul does not do anything and is transcendental to such activities, is thus affected by conditional life. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Mayavadi philosopher, who does not differentiate between the Supreme Spirit and the individual spirit, says that the conditional existence of the living entity is his lila, or pastime. But the word, open quote, pastime, close quote, implies employment in the activities of the Lord. The Mayavadis misuse the word and say that even if the living entity has become a stool-eating hog, he is also enjoying his pastimes. This is a most dangerous interpretation. Actually, the Supreme Lord is the leader and maintainer of all living entities. His pastimes are transcendental to any material activity. Such pastimes of the Lord cannot be dragged to the level of the conditioned activities of the living entities. In conditional life, the living entity is in conditional life, the living entity actually remains as if a captive in the hands of material energy. Whatever the material energy dictates, the conditional soul does. He has no responsibility. He is simply the witness of the action, but he is forced to act in that way due to his offense in his eternal relationship with Krishna. Lord Krishna therefore says in the Bhagavad Gita that Maya, his material energy, is so forceful that it is insurmountable. But if a living entity simply understands that his constitutional position is to serve Krishna, and he tries to act on this principle, then however conditioned he may be, the influence of Maya immediately vanishes. That is clearly stated in the Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter. Krishna takes charge of anyone who surrenders to him in helplessness, and thus the influence of Maya, or conditional life, is removed. The spirit soul is actually such Chit Ananda, eternal, full of bliss, and full of knowledge. Under the clutches of Maya, however, he suffers from conditioned birth, death, disease, and old age. One has to be serious to cure the condition of material existence and transfer himself to Krishna consciousness, for thus his long suffering may be mitigated without difficulty. In summary, the suffering of the conditioned soul is due to his attachment to material energy. This attachment should thus be transferred from matter to Krishna. Om Gyanate Manandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksa Unmeditam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamaham Bharati Swapadantikam. Prabhupada uses the word insurmountable sometimes, and sometimes the word easily. Insurmountable means that it can't be overcome. It's just so strong and so powerful that it can't be overcome. But in certain circumstances, it becomes easy to overcome. And he mentions there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita that talks about this. It says, Naivihi esha gunamayi mama maya duratya prapadyante evam prapadyante maya metan tarantite. The three modes of nature are so powerful that they're almost impossible to overcome. But one who is a devotee of Krishna can easily cross beyond. It's so powerful that it's insurmountable, impossibly difficult. But it becomes very easy if one becomes surrendered. So in the early stages of Krishna consciousness, there's nice food, nice dancing, nice music, nice people. But after a while, it turns out that there is a war going on. We're in the middle of it. We're on one side of it. We're in a war against the material energy. It is said that Maharaj Pariksit is the kind of person whose enemy was never born. But sometimes he had to act in ways that were unpleasant. It's mentioned in the first canto that he encountered a man who was torturing or killing, about to kill, a cow, and that Maharaj Pariksit drew his sword on this person. We never found out what happened to him, but these Raja Rishis had to do sometimes very unpleasant things. Although they were Raja Rishis and very loving to all their charges, all the citizens, they had to protect them. And sometimes that involved even killing the demons and rascals who were attacking them in various ways. So sometimes the material energy is very difficult to overcome. And it's especially difficult in this age because we're very attracted by everything. But yogis could, as is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam and in some of the purports of the third and fourth cantos, especially the second canto, that they can be easily overcome. It's possible to fly in the air. It's possible to walk on water. It's possible to get so small that one can come through a locked door. It's possible to get so larger than an elephant. It's possible to live underwater, like in submarines. It's possible to float on the water, like ships. And it's possible to fly in the air, like airplanes. But yogis didn't have to do it mechanically. They could do it very easily. Just by thinking about it, they could do it. And they could do even things that were so seemingly impossible to be done mechanically. They could fly in outer space. They could go from one planet to another very easily without machines. And they could do things that are seemingly impossible to be done in material nature. Prabhupada mentions what some of these mystical siddhis are, and that Krishna is the master of all mystics. It's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna is the master of all mystics, that he could do mystical things. And those who were devotees of Krishna, they could also do very mystical things. They could disappear, they could make themselves invisible, they could make themselves small, they could make themselves heavy. Once in a class, someone, who I don't think he's here now, but he asked me, what's the most difficult thing you ever have to do? And my answer was getting up in the morning. There was a bit of a ripple of laughter or titter or something that went around the room, but that's true. The first 10 seconds of rising after you hear the alarm, it's very painful to do, but we do it because we know that we have something very wonderful awaiting us. So the material nature is very difficult. Whether it's overcoming sleep, whether it's just not liking good music or being in nature or protecting everybody, it's very difficult. Prabhupada uses the word impossible. And then once he said, when he was in Los Angeles, that he wanted 17 volumes of Chaitanya Charitamrita produced in 2 weeks' time. And one of the devotees said, "Oh, that's impossible." And Prabhupada's response was that impossible is a word in a fool's dictionary. And he wasn't the originator of that saying. That's attributed to people in the past, like Napoleon Bonaparte, who said that impossible n'est pas français. There's no such thing as impossible in the French language. And he was a brilliant warrior, although he was captured and poisoned to death, drop by drop, by the British people, who were very experts in warfare. But it is very difficult. And it's almost like walking in war. Sometimes they plant landmines. And to walk across a field that's full of landmines is very difficult. You could be destroyed at any moment if you're not careful. And that's what is done in warfare, in modern warfare. So dealing with material energy is kind of like that. We know that it's wrong. We know that it's politics is a dirty game. We know that rock and roll people are full of sinful activity. We know that sinful activity is everywhere, even within devotional circles. But still, we know we have to fight, and it is a fight. It's a war against Maya, but it's a very easy war to win. And how it can be easily won is that one can simply surrender. Because if one engages in the service of surrender, then the most difficult thing becomes easy, becomes possible. So that war is a war. And in the beginning it's very, very pleasant, but then it becomes known that we're actually in a war. And Prabhupada has said that every step we take towards Krishna, Maya takes a step or 10 steps towards us. So it's a constant struggle, and it's characterized sometimes as the struggle for existence, the hard struggle for existence. Wouldn't be such a hard struggle, but it is, because the material energy is also created by Krishna, and he makes it not easy for us. But it becomes very easy when one surrenders to Krishna. So the difficult things become easy. And it's mentioned in one of the purports that as we progress in Krishna consciousness, we have to cultivate ourselves. And he uses the simile of a creeper or a plant that grows a climber, that you have to keep watering it. But if you keep watering the climber or the creeper, it also appears that weeds grow up. And sometimes people who have been valiantly producing Krishna activity and doing all sorts of things that are unusual or disliked by many, they have to pull up the weeds, because the weeds are very constant, and Maya is producing those weeds. So if it's not only watering the creepers and the plants, but removing the weeds. And therefore, we have seen that people who have been active and prosperous in Krishna consciousness, doing everything properly, sometimes they fall down. Even very highly elevated people. It does happen quite often, not just in Krishna consciousness, but everywhere. People who are Mohammedans or Jews or Christians or whatever they are, sometimes they fall into deep depression by succumbing to these weeds that are growing up. They're very careful to follow all the regulated principles, but at the same time, they're being attacked by the weeds of material nature. They're attacking, and unless they're able to remove these weeds, the progress in Krishna consciousness is completely eradicated or stultified. So we're constantly in a war. And it is very easy if one overcomes it, but the difficulties are always going to be there. There's always going to be enemies. And I heard a lecture once, I think it was around about 1973, and Prabhupada was talking about Duryodhana, who's a villain in Krishna consciousness parlance, and he was he had a very, very powerful mystic powers, and he was able to ascertain who was on the battlefield, what was going on thousands of miles away in Kurukshetra. And Prabhupada mentioned that he was a very astute, among other things, a very astute politician. And he wanted, in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is a very, very difficult chapter to lecture on, very difficult even to read, because there's many Sanskrit words that you can't even pronounce, what to speak of know who they are. But he was assessing all the people who had joined the Pandavas to make the enemy very strong. And Prabhupada was giving his lecture in the Bhaktivedanta manner and saying that this is a sign of intelligence, especially in warfare. You have to gauge the strength of the enemy. It's done even today in modern politics and in the corporate world. People are spying on their enemies. They're watching very carefully what their enemies are doing. And so this is a sign of intelligence. That's what makes some of the corporations very successful and some of them very unsuccessful, because they don't realize how powerful their enemies are. And so they have to use their intelligence. And there's an incident where Ashwatthama did something very heinous. He not only broke regulative principles by killing Draupadi's 5 sleeping children. They were asleep, they didn't have weapons, and yet they were murdered. And according to the Shastra, if there is such a heinous activity as murder, it must be, the actor must be executed. And there's another saying that if he's a Brahmin, he must be saved, he can't be killed. And so there are seeming contradictions throughout the Shastras. And Bhima, on the one hand, wanted to kill him, and Arjuna was instructed to kill him. But Draupadi, the mother of the children who died, wanted him spared. And Yudhisthira also wanted him spared. So what to do when there are conflicting or seemingly opposite scriptural injunctions, or things that you should do and things that you should not do? So Prabhupada asked Arjuna to do the needful, and it's explained in the Bhagavad Gita that for people who are infamous or highly reputed, to be infamous is worse than dying. Worse. So what did Arjuna do? He was an extremely intelligent person, not a yogi, but extremely intelligent. He had to kill him and not kill him at the same time. That was his instruction, and that's what Krishna said to use your sharp intelligence to see what to do. So, in a sense, Arjuna was asked to think. He was asked to be an independent thinker. He had to think independently of what he was instructed to do by his superiors, what he was instructed to do by the Shastras, and what he's instructed not to do by the Shastras. And so he deeply humiliated this man. He cut his hair in such a way that he looked ridiculous. And he took the jewel from his forehead, which is a great insult for a person who is a Kshatriya, who has a jewel sewn into his forehead. And then he was driven away. So that was his way of killing and not killing someone. So the Krishna conscious philosophy can sometimes be very difficult to understand for most people, because it's very easy in the beginning to see how everybody is dancing and chanting and listening to very lively speeches and making friends and having good food, and it's not available anywhere. But then they have to realize that there are some contradictions, and not only contradictions in scriptural writings, but in what people say. Some people say one thing, some people say another thing. And sometimes Prabhupada himself has been found guilty of saying opposite things to different people at different times and different places. And what's unfortunate is that some people take whatever he said in one saying, in one place, and saying that it's always true for all times and all places, in all situations, for all people. And that's just not what we would call intellectually honest. Because Prabhupada has asked us to use our thinking to be not strangers to independent thought, that sometimes it has to be used. We have to think. So it's not so simple. It's not black and white, that there's good and there's bad. Sometimes there's a mixture of good and bad. And in the three modes of material nature, which cause people to be bound up in the material world, there's a mixture sometimes in the mode of goodness and the mode of passion, the mode of ignorance. Sometimes in the mode of ignorance, there's a streak of goodness. And sometimes in the mode of goodness, there's a streak of evil or passion. So these things are sometimes coming in a mixed way, and they're very difficult to sort out what is the thing to do, what is right and what is wrong. So that's what people have to experience when they enter into this philosophy of Krishna consciousness. When they read it very carefully, and they find apparent contradictions, and we even read that Krishna is the absolver or resolution of all contradictory sayings, and in a way he is. And if we're fully Krishna conscious, we can resolve all apparent difficulties. There's even devotees whose job is to resolve conflict resolutions. That's their job. And they're still devotees, but they have to work in the material world, and part of their service is to resolve conflicts. So that goes on in the material world. It also goes on in the spiritual world. There are also conflicts. But one who is a Krishna conscious can make these conflicts very easy to overcome. That's what Krishna says. And it's said in this purport, the living entity actually remains as a captive in the hands of material energy. Whatever the material energy dictates, the conditioned soul does. He has no responsibility. He is simply the witness of the action, but he is forced to act in that way, due to his offense, offense in his eternal relationship with Krishna. So these are some things that Prabhupada says in one place, but says something very different in another place, and it's very hard to determine what is the right thing to do without thinking very deeply and carefully. So that's my 2 pies for this morning. Are there any, or 2 cents, any contradiction, any questions or comments? Yes? You have to get a microphone.
That part of the purport that you highlighted, in conditional life, the living entity actually remains as if a captive. Whatever the material energy dictates, the conditioned soul does. He has no responsibility. I mean, it's difficult to understand that, isn't it? Because it
is if you're in a court and you're brought there because someone accused you of murder, and your excuse is, well, I didn't do it. It was the gun that did it. So we could say that we're all innocent, but we're victims of the material energy. It's the material energy that's causing us to do all things. But at the same time, Krishna gives us the freedom to overcome those the atmosphere of conditioned life. And if we surrender to his word, then we can overcome. It's not the gun, it's not the energy, it's misuse of our own free will. We're given that will, and we can use it or abuse it according to how we act. We can always blame others and the material energy, but it's actually not that simple. So sometimes this philosophy is very difficult to grasp because it appears contradictory in many places.
So our only independence then is whether we want to surrender to Krishna or not. Otherwise, we're under the control of the material.
We have that. We have that freedom to act or not act. And if we act according to what Krishna wants, it becomes very easy. And even though people look at us and they will say, "Oh, these guys are renouncing intoxication, they're renouncing illicit sex, they're renouncing gambling, prostitution. How can they be happy?" And so in that sense, we're fighting the war, but we're winning the war because we're doing what's often very difficult and impossible. That's surrendering to Krishna. It's not easy. It might appear very easy to a neophyte, very blissful and happy, very colorful, very full of wonderful music and nice people, but it's not that simple. Hare Krishna. Anything else? Okay, we'll stop at that point. Hare Krishna.